Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Welcome also to those joining us on Rogers or via webcasting. And I would invite everyone here in the audience to stand and, as you're able, and join us in the singing of O Canada. And we will be tonight's choir. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been moved by Councillor Schneider that the minutes of the regular meeting held August 29th and the special meetings held August 29th and September 12th is mailed to the Mayor and Councillors be accepted. Councillor Yunetsky, you have something?
Yes, one correction. On the August 29th meeting at the beginning, it says all members present except myself. I was in attendance. Okay. I came back from surgery that day.
Okay.
And I have a couple of motions in the minutes, so just a matter of it.
Okay, we'll have staff correct that. So with those corrections, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, there being none. Communications referred to file. You'll see the flag request that has been granted in the communications. And we'll now move into our presentations. And we have with us this evening our KW International Children's Games team. So welcome to the Kitchener-Waterloo International Children's Games participants who will be sharing their experience of the summer games that took place in New Taipei, Taiwan. There were two sports represented at these games, table tennis and basketball. There was a total of 14 athletes, 2 coaches, and 1 head of delegation. And I would now like to invite the president of the Kitchener-Waterloo International Children's Games, Roberta Mulder, to present their experience representing our city of Kitchener. Welcome, Roberta.
Mayor Verbanowicz, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of the KW Children's Games. The Games were founded in 1968 by Metod Clement, a Slovenian sports instructor, better known as the father of the Games. His aim was to promote peace and friendship through sports to the world's youth. In the past 50 years, the Summer Games have attracted over 45,000 participants. Representing 450 cities from over 80 countries and 5 continents. The Games are considered to be the largest gathering of young people taking part in sport in the world. In July 2016, the City of Kitchener-Waterloo sent 2 delegations consisting of 4 Kitchener table tennis athletes, 10 boys basketball, 8 girls basketball players from the KW Vipers, 4 swimmers from Roe and their respective coaches, along with myself and Kathy Stowell as the head of delegation to represent our cities and our country. The Games were hosted in New Taipei, Taiwan. Our send-off was one to be remembered. We were fortunate to have Mayor Verbanowicz, Waterloo City Councillor Angela Veith, and the Honourable Barges Chager, Minister of Travel and Tourism. As volunteers, we invest our time helping to develop tomorrow's leaders through the provision of sport and recreation programs in our community. We do this with much pride and are rewarded knowing that our community participates in the world stage. As Canadians, we have a responsibility to be leaders in the promotion of peace through sport all around the world. Joining us here this evening are the members of the Kitchener delegation that competed at these games. I would like to introduce them to you now. You may wish to hold your applause until we've read the names. From basketball, we have Marshall Barrick, Michael Liu, John Tulipano, Joel Azir, Leo Pataka, Kyle Saunders, Marcus Umana, Carson Reed. From table tennis, we have Marina Ilias, Patrick Ibrahim, and Noran Hassan. Congratulations to you all. The next Summer Games are scheduled for July 2017 to be hosted by Kaunas, Lithuania. Planning is well underway to send both a Kitchener and Waterloo delegation comprising of 8 KW affiliate sports organizations. Once again, we hope to deliver that once-in-a-lifetime experience to all the local athletes. In closing, I would like to thank the members of our board, the parents' phenomenal fundraising, the City of Kitchener and their staff members, Bob Shane and Ashley Purvis, who had provided assistance to this wonderful program. Special thanks to you, Bill Ioannidis. Your presence at our bonding and team function was a little chaotic, but we appreciated your presence. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Marina, one of our table tennis athletes. She would like to share with you some of experiences from New Taipei.
Dear Mayor Verbanovic and councillors, my name is Marina Elias. I am 12 years old and I've been playing table tennis for 7 years. This summer, thanks to the effort of all the parents, athletes, coaches, and heads of delegation, I was able, along with 13 other athletes, to represent Kitchener in the International Children's Games in New Taipei, Taiwan. First off, I'd like to thank the fundraising committee who really inspired us to work as a team, and without you, this trip wouldn't have been possible. I also want to thank all of the people from our community who donated and supported us, because whether it was a company, a business, or just a neighbor, everybody helped us get there in the end. Next, I want to thank the itinerary committee for organizing all the tours and accommodations, and the apparel committee who allowed us to spread the Canadian spirit all over the world. And finally, a big thank you to Robbie, who really kept this trip together. She did a great job putting up with us and making sure everything worked perfectly. So thank you. Going to the International Children's Games was an opportunity I dreamed of having since my brother went in 2012 to South Korea. The way he spoke about the games made it seem like a dream to me, and once we got back, I realized that what my brother had explained to me wasn't even half of the joy and happiness that I and all of the other athletes felt. The hard work and practice that was needed to get there was nothing compared to what we were being rewarded with in the end. It really was the trip of a lifetime. The reason for the happiness we had in Taiwan was mostly from all the kindness that the Taiwanese people spread around. I remember when myself and the rest of the table tennis athletes got lost on our way back from dinner and started arguing about which way to go, and immediately about 15 people had crowded around us offering help, a scene that our tour guide guaranteed us would happen at some point in our trip. From this, I learned that the different languages we spoke couldn't stop them from trying to help us and showing how much they cared for each other. Another time, when we were hiking up Elephant Mountain, the basketball team stopped by some basketball courts and started playing with the teenagers that were previously on the courts. It was amazing how people from 2 different lifestyles and 2 different countries could communicate through something they both enjoyed. The food there was definitely another highlight. Our tour guide brought us to her uncle's restaurant, and unlike many of the foods we eat here, all of his foods had tea as an ingredient. There was tea rice and tea chicken and tea jello, and it was all very tasty. Their traditional food was something we couldn't miss, with rice noodles, soups, and dumplings, and until then, I didn't realize how delicious vegetables could be. We also had the chance to visit Taipei 101, an amazing building which had the fastest elevator in the world until 2015. The view from the 89th floor was absolutely incredible, and until now, the image is still in my head. We also got to see temples, tour museums, ride on a gondola, and see one of Taiwan's most beautiful waterfalls. At the actual games, I'd like to personally thank Google Translate for saving us. After 30, I stopped counting how many times we used it. We met people from so many different countries, and thanks to the spirit of the games, we were able to bring things home from all over the world. We are so fortunate to live in a city that supports and allows us to have such an opportunity. We played great, and even though we didn't go back home with a medal, we went home with so much more. We went home with new friends, new experiences, and new memories that will never be forgotten. Thank you.
And our last presenter.
Well, hello, Mayor Verbanovic. I am Patrick Ibrahim, and I'm presenting to you this picture that was taken in front of the Taipei City Hall. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in tonight and sharing with us a little bit about your experience on this trip. It's always great to hear back from the groups after they've had an opportunity to come back, share their experiences, tell us a little bit about the country they visited, the new friends they met, and the experience that they had. I think you made the point, and it is an important one. The fact that you have had this opportunity to represent our community and our country at these games is a great opportunity. One that many others don't necessarily always have, but it is one that I think if we could provide every young person with that opportunity, it would do so much in terms of building peace and harmony globally. But I want to thank you for representing our community well. Thanks for coming back healthy and safe. And despite the typhoon that hit around the time that you were there, and hope that you'll carry these memories with you for years to come to go forward. And thanks to all the parents who are here this evening and family members who supported you on this journey. So have a great evening and a great school year ahead of you. Thanks again. You're free to stay for the rest of the council meeting if you want, but if you don't want to, we won't be offended if you quietly work your way out. We'll now move into delegations, and I just want to remind delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentations. Excuse me, I'm going to deal with 3 items very quickly because we have people who are here in case there are any questions, but I don't anticipate there will be. So we'll deal with them first. The first one is Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee number 1. This is with respect to Barra Castle, and Councillor Singh, if you can click in and bring that forward, please.
Yes, that item's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marsh?
A question?
Okay, go ahead. Of the delegation, or?
Is there going to be a delegation?
No, the delegation is here if there were questions of them, but...
Okay, yeah, I do have one question.
Oh, you do have one. Okay, Mr. Pupolo, if you can come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Pupolo. Just a question regarding the, we received some notification that there were additional conversations with residents of Mitchell Avenue?
Mitchell Street, yes.
Mitchell Street. Just confirming, will your development company be amenable to working with those residents to making sure that they are satisfied with the privacy in their backyards?
We've already discussed in a private meeting with many of the Mitchell Street residents, and we will engage them during the site plan process, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And you are committed to, so just to answer my question, if you don't mind.
Yes. we
Okay,
will.
fantastic. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, hold on. There's more. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Pupolo, I'm glad to hear that And I would just compliment you on the way your company has dealt with residents over the past months. I've been very pleased with the way that's gone.
Thank you very much. It's been a long process. We've engaged them 3 times, and we've improved the Barrack Castle as a result of their engagement with us.
Okay, so with that, that's all the questions we have for you. Thank you, Mr. Pupolo, for I'll too echo the comments that have been made and appreciate the level of engagement that your company has provided with the neighborhood. I'll also remind council that as per the note from Garrett Stevenson, there is a revised bylaw that we'll be dealing with later today. And that note was sent to council on September the 22nd. So with that, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I'll now deal with heritage item number 1. And we have Ms. Wendy Pewarrick and Mr. Graham White here. If there are any questions, Councillor Yanetsky, if I can ask you to bring that forward, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Heritage Committee recommends, pursuant to the Ontario Heritage Act, that the heritage application to amend and permit the construction of a detached single-car garage to the property at 10 Sims Estate Place be approved according with the plans and supplementary information, and that the final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by city staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor John Gazzola.
Okay, thank you. If there not being any discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the last one that we have a delegation here for is in Committee of the Whole, item 3-2, the fence variance at 901 Gravel Ridge Place. You're moving it? Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Seconder, Councillor Marsh. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Your application's been approved, sir. Thank you. We'll now move on then to our registered delegation, and that's Mr. Julian Ickham and Mr. John Clooney. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us. We're here to talk about poverty and its impact on its citizens. We were people who organized the tent city because we felt that there was a need for housing. Out of the tent city, we worked with the region to find housing for those that were living at the tent city, and we thank the region for engaging in dialogue with us and helping us come up with a solution for this problem. Unfortunately, the problem of poverty has not been adequately addressed. The needs of Tent City that gave rise to Tent City are still there, and we've identified 3 key points. I'm going to keep what I have to say short so John can talk about from first-hand experience. The one issue is that those that have signed up for housing, not all of them have received housing yet, despite the fact that we started in negotiations with the region in July. Some of them are still sleeping outside in very horrible conditions. The second issue is that within city property, we are having harassment of poor people or those that, maybe have backpacks or something, and people think are homeless, which is not a positive thing. And the third issue is that given that we were able to mobilize the region to come up with workers to go to the community and find housing and find welfare, get people on welfare and meet the needs of the people. We don't see this as something that needs to be stopped. So in terms of our first and third point, we are currently engaging in discussion with the region on this. We've met with a representative on Saturday, actually, to move this forward. It's the second point that I feel is not addressed, and I'll give the last 3 minutes to John so he can talk about his experience with the second point.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of City Council. I feel that the actions of some of the security personnel at City Hall was very harassmental to me on one occasion that I can recall. I'm unaware that there was a law that you're not allowed to lie down in City Hall or on city property, and I was told this by the security guard here and led out of the building. And I was just curious, is that because I had a backpack and a tent strapped to me. You know, what happened was I was stretching my back just for a moment. I wasn't in the building for more than 5 minutes, and I was accused of sleeping on the bench in the back of the Rotarian. And it was very strong-handed the way that they had asked me to leave and stuff like that. And I feel that that was all because I was a little unkempt at the time and my backpack and stuff. And I was also in the news about Tent City at the time. I'd also like to address perhaps any of the councillors who are on the regional council, because it has to do with the security at the bus terminal. And I'm not sure whether that falls in your category, but they also had me and a friend removed. I was actually spending money. I bought breakfast for a young fellow who was in there. We were sitting on a bench, and a security guard came up and started actually harassing me, which I thought was violating my rights by asking me where I was going and what bus I was waiting for and stuff like that. I happened to be talking to a young man who was homeless and, you know, had issues, and I have issues myself, or did, and I was counseling him in a sorts. I was told, anyways, we left the premises, but we kind of had some words with the security guard. I told her to F you. I came back later that night at 10 o'clock at night to catch a bus, and I was told by a fellow guard that I had been banned from the property, and I thought that's very strong-handed. Is that who becomes the prosecutor, the judge, and the man who sentenced or, you know, passed a sentence on me? He told me I was suspended from this property for 90 days. All due to the fact I was wearing a knapsack. You know, it was very well known that I was homeless because I was, you know, a little bit unkempt, because there's not a whole lot of places to keep clean and stuff like that. You're in city parks and stuff like that when we were running Tent City. And I just wanted you to know that, you know, we are a society of laws, and rights, you know, can be broken. And, you know, this really should be addressed. Your security team should be addressed about this, about harassing people just because they're poor.
I'd like to use the last 6 seconds to thank the city for working with us during the Tent City, and that these issues should be solved through dialogue and discussion, not through the use of force. Thank you very much, and thank you for what you have done for Tent City.
Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. There are some questions for you. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, question to Julian. Julian, well, I certainly support anything that is against young people homelessness or homelessness in general. Before you set up Tent City in Victoria Park, which happens every year, do you approach the city to ask for permission to set up?
We believe that people have a right to protest, and we believe that a right is something that is inalienable. I'm a Republican myself, and that's how I would identify politically. I believe in a republic, and as such, I believe that rights are inalienable. With that being said, every year we do approach bylaws, and we do approach parks, and we do negotiate with bylaw and park, because despite the fact that we do have rights, you know, we also have an obligation to the larger community, and, you know, like, we have no problem with Ribfest. We have no problem with the Multicultural Festival or other things. So we always talk to, like, the coordinators to have that sense of dialogue and discussion. So we don't ask permission. We say we are doing this, when would be a good time for this to happen, and we discuss with, like, the staff and bylaw and parks and stuff. So while that's not asking permission, it's taking into account that there are, you know, other people that are using the park, and it pushes forward the idea of actual shared space, that, like, public property is a space that's shared by all classes, not just one.
And I appreciate that. Can you tell me one other question? What do you do within Tent City to police the cleanup of human waste and drug paraphernalia that is left behind?
Okay, so there's 2 issues here. There's the issue of community control and policing, and there's also the issue of the drug problem. I think that both of these issues need to be treated separate. In terms of the drug problem, I'd like to start by saying that if someone goes right now to the bus terminal in the men's washroom, 8 out of 10 times there's traces of cocaine or heroin or other drugs that people snort on the toilet. You know where you get the toilet paper from? I don't know what you call it. The toilet paper dispensary, whatever it's called. If one goes to any of the local shelters and goes in the washroom, one would see that drugs is a serious problem. In City Hall here, people come and use drugs. And drugs are a problem that affects all classes, not just poor people and homeless people. The issue with poor people and homeless people is that the impact of drugs on them are a lot more harsh. Many of the people that we have known from starting our drop-in center called The Spot are now dead because of parasitical death dealers that care nothing for poor people and are no better off than the capitalist ruling class that just want to suck the blood out of poor people. This year, we have monitored in our own community 38 deaths of people that we have worked with from fentanyl. We have been raising this issue since 2007, and it's only recently getting media traction now that fentanyl is getting into the middle class, and the middle class is being affected. In terms of drugs and policing, we have a policy that, I'll deal with the drug issue first. We believe in harm reduction. We believe that drugs are a social problem and need to be treated as such. With that being said, we recognize that the park is a public place, and we do hand out needles for people to use, but we collect the needles. Many times people have said that, there's needles lying around, there's this and there's that. Gloria from Bylaw herself, we've called her quite a few times to come with her own eyes and see, the reality that a lot of the drug use and whatever is exaggerated. A lot of the garbage is exaggerated. Last year from Roof, when people were throwing the slander around of garbage everywhere and this and that, Roof actually sent workers to come and clean the garbage, and they got a lot less than a handbag of garbage. So, I think that that's kind of something that is being, exaggerated. With that being said, we have had problems at Tent City with dealers coming, pimps coming, the parasitical class, if I can call them, of the capitalists that make their blood off of street youth, and we've always taken a hard line against these people. We have driven these people out. If they've attacked us with words, we've argued with words. Several times they've attacked us with fists and knives. I think that Gloria we were meeting with Gloria once when a white supremacist Nazi all hopped up on meth attacked all of us with knives, right? So these issues are issues of people outside of Tent City who have a different agenda than us. Their agenda is an agenda of profit, no different than the big businesses that are destroying our community. Their agenda is an agenda of misery. Their agenda is an agenda of death, whereas our agenda is an agenda of socialism. Our agenda is an agenda of equality. Our agenda is an agenda where people don't do drugs because they find something to live for, which is the creation of a better society that we can all participate in. In terms of policing our own community, given the fact that there are limited resources and limited space and all that sort of stuff, problems come up. Someone gets pissed off because they misplaced their cell phone, and they'll accuse someone else of stealing it. The way we deal with that is every day at 7 o'clock, which sometimes is 5 o'clock, sometimes is 9 o'clock, but ideally at 7 o'clock after dinner, we have a meeting where all the problems within are sorted out and people bring forward their problems and complaints, and we try to solve these problems by finding common ground. We have kicked people out of the Tent City who have not abided by the collective decision of Tent City, and we have removed people whose agendas were antisocial behavior. But at the same time, we recognize that, these problems don't come out of nowhere. Psychos aren't born, they're created, and we take that into account as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
Sort of. Thank you.
Those are all the questions we have. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in this evening and sharing your concerns with us. Staff will follow up on them, and I'll just also point out that on the issue of affordable housing and so on, I mean, that is one that we continue to work on and advocate with the other orders of government, and encourage you to do that as well. In fact, at the tail end of this week, I'll be meeting with some of my other mayor colleagues in Toronto at a housing summit that Mayor Tory's hosting. So, okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving on then to the tenders. And Ms. Palmer's here to answer our questions. Somebody want to move the tenders? Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Questions on the tenders. Number 1, Oxford Bond and Elizabeth Street reconstruction. Any questions? No. Okay. Ottawa Trussler Sewage Pumping Station. Any questions? Councillor Fernandez.
I just want to make sure that I understand. It says developer contribution twice to the tune of $548,000. Am I incorrect in understanding that this is a credit for refund agreement that the developer will be paying for the entire project, and it's just being broken out this way right now?
Mr. Reedman or Mr. Wilmer? Who wants to tackle? Mr. Reedman? Okay, go ahead.
Through the mayor, this is being paid for by the developer.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, no further questions on that one. Number 3, the bridge inspection. Any questions? Number 4, Shantz Lane reconstruction. Any questions on Shantz Lane? Councillor Fernandez.
So it's not necessarily a question just specifically to this. I noticed that this company has got 2 significant tenders, not one that we're familiar with, but I'm now understanding that they purchased Group and another consulting firm. I continue to be concerned about the number of consultant services we are paying out for engineering, and I just want to make that statement. I know I asked about it today during our audit.
Thank you. Number 5, supply used motor graders. Any questions? Yep, Councillor Yanetsky.
Question in regard to the item that we are, I know we're replacing 2 of them, but one of them had a life of 13 years and the other one 55 years. And I'm not too sure which item is which, because you sort of have A and B, but I'm not too sure which one A and B refers to. So which one's the 55-year-old one?
Ms. Palmer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Unit 497 is the 55-year-old one, which is the scraper.
It's a scraper? Okay. I'm assuming that this new one will last 55 years as well?
We're actually not buying a scraper, we're buying a grader with this replacement.
You're buying a grader?
Yes.
Or something even more bigger, but...
We can only hope that all of our equipment lasts 55 years.
Oh, okay. So the one that was 55 years, you've just gone to garbage? Is that what's happening to it?
We would try and dispose of it. We would look at either option.
Speak up, I can't quite hear you.
Oh, through you, Mr. Mayor, we would look at disposing of it. If it had any residual value at all, we could look at auctioning it off or disposing of it for scrap.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola on this one? On number 6? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, on number 6, can you explain to me what that is? Is it getting our equipment ready for winter? Is that what it is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the equipment that goes on to the back of the cabin chassis, which...
Okay, the question I really had is, it seems to me we used to do that in-house. Do we not do that anymore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the purchase. When we purchase a new cabin chassis, we have to purchase the equipment, and that is installed on the truck at the time we purchase it.
So this is the first time installment? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
What happens at the end of the season? Our staff takes that equipment off, right? And then in future years, we put it on ourselves?
Ms. Fletcher?
That is correct.
I'm just curious why we wouldn't put it on ourselves the first time. Would it not be less expensive?
My understanding from Fleet is they've done the analysis, and it is more cost-effective to have it installed at the time of purchase.
So should they do all our installing and taking off? That's the question that has to follow. Well, perhaps we could look into this. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, the tenders have been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we'll move on to the reports of the committees. Community and Infrastructure Services Committee. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yes, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dave Schneider that items from the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee be approved, and there are 7. 1 through 7 are all on the list still.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I would like to deal with number 7 separately.
Okay, we'll come back to that one then. Councillor Singh. Okay, Councillor Fernandez. Oh, sorry.
So, in dealing with number 7 separately, is there any way that I can be, or council can be assured that the funding source is not the tax base for the next number of years? I know that Councillor Davey made some comments around that, as did a number of other councillors, Councillor Singh as well. How do we put that into wording into this specific?
Well, I'll let staff, or Mr. Wilmer, I guess, is here to respond, but I think as I recall at committee, the indication was that this would come back with a proposed financial plan.
Through the Mayor, that's correct. And I think that the last paragraph of committee's recommendation to council essentially says that staff are directed to come back with the funding strategy. So as referred to in the report, there's a number of potential funding sources, and that would be part of the funding strategy we bring back.
Okay. Then I respectfully request that we break out, because I know that I had some concerns around the remaining, that last paragraph. So can we separate those out, please?
Okay, so I'll come back to number 7, and we'll break that paragraph out as well. The balance of the report, then, items 1 to 6, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Singh, you clicked in. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I had some questions regarding item number 7. Hopefully staff on hand would be able to give some light to that. The corresponding work that's outlined by the master plan has to do with, obviously, the Civic Square, my apologies, Carl Zare Square, but also the rear lot as well, the open space along Duke Street. And I was surprised to hear from staff that that's corresponding work related to the underground garage that's below it. Now, in the past, that space was earmarked for possible future development. Is that still a part of the strategy, or previous councils have shifted that importance of that space?
Mr. Wilmer?
Through the Mayor, it hasn't been a decision of council, but I think that at the administrative level, we have determined that the likelihood of proceeding with another tower addition on City Hall is extremely rare, extremely unlikely. So we're aware of the prospect, but it's not something we foresee likely during the lifetime of this proposed work, so the next quarter century.
I can appreciate there's more complexities than a simple answer. Are you able to give a basic explanation as to why that rationale would be taken from an administrative level, or why has something not come back to staff or to council in reprioritizing that? Obviously, especially if when the envisioning of the City Hall came about, that was earmarked for development.
Certainly, I think the two reasons are if there's expansion of staff complement, we would first explore every opportunity to increase the density within our existing floor area by tearing down interior walls and putting in modular furniture. And second, explore possibilities of accommodating staff in other facilities, such as the operations facility.
That's fair enough, but that still wouldn't allow, again, it could still allow development that could be for other usage than for usage of City Hall administrative duties, right? It could allow development to take place, or I guess a disposition, right? That would be the alternative then, or originally that was what was for, as space was needed, that expansion be on that site.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but Ms. Fletcher's indicating yes.
Yeah, she nodded.
Through the mayor, yes. The intention of the tower 25 years ago was in the event that there was a need for space for staff.
Okay, all right. Obviously, the reason why I can't ask is I have limited time left. Our downtown has changed significantly just in the last 10 years or so, far more so than probably what was envisioned, what would be. When the City Hall was initially designed and developed, and that site was left vacant. That's a crucial spot, prime development spot, especially because the LRT station abutting right in front of it. Now, if work was to happen with whatever underground membrane that needs to be repaired, would that limit the potential of this lot for it to be still developable? Or costs would be incurred that would be unnecessary if that decision were to be taken down the road. I'm not saying this is an argument for today, but if that decision were to be taken down the road.
Mr. Riedman?
Through the mayor, this would not preclude development in the future. We have a short-term need to replace the membrane, which would be needed in advance of any redevelopment opportunities.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola?
Are we on 7 now?
We're on 7, yes.
Okay, I will make a comment. I won't be supporting number 7, and I would like a recorded vote when we deal with it. Now, I won't go into a great deal of detail. Unfortunately, I was not here when this was discussed, but I'm really concerned when things pop up like this outside of our capital forecast debates, where things actually find their way into the capital forecast somewhat via a back door. And because of that, it may well be that there may be expenditures required down the road, but I think the proper time to deal with it is when we're dealing with all of the other capital projects of the city. I'm not prepared at this time to give any support to a project really that in today's dollars and today's estimates we're looking at $10 million expenditures that we hadn't planned on. So doesn't eliminate looking at this when we look at all the other capital requirements that we have in the city. Our infrastructure, I thought, was one of the most important issues that we had to deal with, and really of a lot more importance than this. So at this time, without going into a lot of debate, I won't be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Davey?
Sorry, just point of clarification, it's a $7.1 million expenditure.
Thank you for that information. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I just think it's important to reiterate, because I think some of the messaging that's gone out isn't overly accurate at this point. I think through the committee what we did was we challenged staff to come back with an implementation plan and a funding plan that we have not approved. We have approved $0 to go towards this. It is not in our capital forecast. It is not coming forward this year in our budget on the capital forecast. But we've asked staff to look at the whole entire picture, but to come back with a plan, A, to fund it, and B, for an implementation strategy. I think those are the two biggest pieces. And at the end of the day, we as council still have the opportunity to say yes to certain pieces and no to other pieces. I know I asked them to look at a middle of the road solution for the fountain, and we pushed back on different ways to try and fund it. And I think that's all to come forward. And I don't think we can lose sight of this. At the end of the day, and I said it 2 weeks ago on Monday, that we are receiving a master plan saying, yes, We need to look at it, but we need to look at it comprehensively with all the information, with the money and dollar figures attached to it. Look at ways to try and fund it differently. See if there's in-between roads. So we really have challenged staff to go back to the table and figure out a way to bring something that we may be able to move forward with. But at the end of the day, we've committed absolutely $0 to this project at this point in time, other than some staff resource timing in order to bring something back so that we can make an educated decision when it comes forward. I think in, what did we decide, like a year time, 2017. It's sometime in 2017. So I think we can't lose sight of that through this whole process.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, kind of similar to that. 2/3 of what council or committee has already approved or directed staff to outline where the funding will come from is not nice to have items. It's necessary investment into infrastructure on a significant investment that is the City Hall and the underground garage. If we don't go ahead, that investment will only deteriorate, compounding the costs and problem, exacerbating future issues, as well as increasing costs as well. So we can't shy away from that responsibility. We don't have a choice. There are some additional investments or additional ideas attached to the master plan that could redesign the public space. And as Councillor Galloway-Seelock has already said, we've only directed staff to go out and find the appropriate funding sources. And as a few have said already, and I'll reiterate that point, and it's important to me, we need to ensure that whatever these costs are, that we do it in a way that it lessens or limits or no impact on the tax base, because again, it's not immediate. We do have time, and we need to look at a all-encompassing approach. I quickly, outlined a asset around the City Hall that is available, that could be used as a funding source, as a asset allocation. But all I'm saying is, all ideas need to be looked at, and not entirely just the tax base as a source of revenue. And I have confidence in staff that they will look at a full encompassing picture and ensure that the limit, the impact of the tax base is limited as much as possible.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to say that obviously this is downtown work that very much needs to be done as soon as possible. It entirely has my support. And I support everything that Councillor Singh just said. I would not support any notion of selling off the rear of City Hall to a developer for private use, if that is what's being suggested. And I would also say that whether it's 10 million or 7.1 million, if we have to go to taxpayers to support this, I would be perfectly willing to do that for that additional $3 million, because City Hall is the heart of the city, and considering all activities that take place at City Hall, I think most residents would be willing to pay to help renovate and improve and update the City Hall.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
In light of the comments tonight, I'm wondering if it might be prudent to break out every paragraph and have a recorded vote on them, because I think there's a lot of different opinions around the horseshoe tonight. And I do believe that Councillor Gazzola may have gotten his $10 million estimate from page 8-6.
Okay. I will take each paragraph separately. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic. I think it's good to point out, too, that we do have to address some critical infrastructure repairs with the membrane, with the surface, the concrete, the trench drains. So that has to be done, and we're just considering adding some possible options on that would be financially attractive to do at the same time. And again, this is just a report that's coming with these options and with the funding options as well.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Vrbanovic. I just have a quick question for staff, because I wasn't here during the committee meetings, and just wanted to know a little bit more about the membrane and the condition of that membrane. Like,
Mr. Reedman?
Through the mayor, so the membrane is cracked and salt and water is penetrating into the concrete structure, and there's some evidence above. It's not a significant issue in terms of structural issue at this point in time, but the cost of replacing the concrete exponentially increases over time. So a report by RJC Consulting recommended about 3 to 5 years for replacement of the membrane.
Okay, and the cost for that portion is 4.1 million?
Through the mayor, to get to the membrane, we have to remove all of the concrete slabs and the substructure and replace all of that stuff, as well as the drainage is older design drainage. There's better drainage systems around nowadays that we would install. So there would be lost efficiencies if we took all that concrete out and substructure and then put the same stuff back in.
Okay, so you're basically saying we kind of have a leaky roof, and if we don't do anything, it's just going to get worse.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions and comments. I'll just make a few of my own. As everyone knows, this building is the seat of local government and is a result of a national competition, architectural competition, that ultimately led in 5 buildings or 5 proposals being shortlisted, and this building was ultimately the result. A building that ended up winning the Governor General's award in architecture. It is also a building that, as we learned through the report, is bringing well over 500,000 of people to City Hall and into the downtown, and is our prime square and gathering place for this community. And I think we also know the importance that civic squares around the world play in being gathering places for community, for civic discourse, and for special events. Obviously, nobody likes finding out that they have to do maintenance. And as I said at committee when we dealt with this, I mean, in retrospect, it probably should have been the council of the day that started setting dollars aside, much like all of our infrastructure, for future replacement. But that wasn't the case, and so now we know we have an issue. We now understand the scope of the issue, and we have to come up with a plan in order to address that. And what we're doing is saying, okay, here conceptually is the plan. Now staff go and figure out how it's going to be paid for, and ideally we won't see that being a burden on ratepayers directly, and we're going to pursue other options of funding from provincial and federal government, as well as potential private sector partners, and so on. And so I will be supporting this with the recognition that there's going to be considerably more dialogue, potentially by this council and future councils on this issue. Councillor Gazzola, you have a further comment you want to make?
Yes, I think
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to have I'm not opposed to what, and I realize that things need to be repaired over time. At the end of last year, we ended up with a balanced capital forecast, and this was not part of that forecast. I would prefer to see where we start out again with that same balanced forecast and introduce a topic like this, because there are things that were in that forecast that are going to have to be dropped out or postponed or pushed down the line. So to me, it's important that what my experience tells me, and this is the way I read it when I was reading, this was approved in principle. And that's what we're giving here, is approval in principle. But my experience tells me that when we quickly approve something in principle, it pretty quickly gets chiseled into stone. So I'm not opposed to having to. I know within time you have to deal with this. It's really only 20 years or so since we've been in this city hall, but I'm just saying there is a process that we should go through, and this I don't agree with this process.
That's fine. You're entitled to that, and I think committee or council respects that. So we will deal with the 5 paragraphs separately. and we'll deal with recorded votes. So the first one is that the City Hall Outdoor Spaces Master Plan be received. Recorded vote. And that's carried unanimously. The second paragraph, that the redevelopment of the outdoor spaces, such as the parking garage, structure, membrane, and so on, be considered the first priority. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The third paragraph is that the replacement rink, fountain, and stage be considered concurrently with the critical infrastructure replacements in terms of the plan that comes forward. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 4, that the remaining items be deferred subject to funding availability. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the final paragraph with respect to funding. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to Finance and Corporate Services Committee. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Sarah Marsh that the 4 items of Finance and Corporate Services be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I would like to deal with the item number 4 separately.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez?
Same.
Okay. So because Councillor Gazzola, you want to continue then?
You want to call the other votes first? Or?
Sure, I can do that. Items 1 through 3. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Gazzola.
Okay, I again have concerns with this issue in that we're sort of jumping the queue here. We're staff have sort of brought half a report back and we're starting to take action on it. I'm really opposed to the establishment of a stabilization and cap and reserve funds until we hear the total picture, and we haven't seen that, and so I really don't. I really can't support where we're going. I know we're going to have to take some action on this. I know it's going to impact our customers, but at this stage in the game, do we really have to direct staff to bring back a detailed strategy, a detailed report on this? To me, that should be understood without confirming at this point that we want to set up a special reserve fund, because if we establish a special reserve fund, we not only have to worry about the increase due to cap and trade, it states that the reserve fund will have a minimum of a 10% balance in it. So we're going to have to charge our customers even more to build up that balance. So that may be necessary in the fullness of time, but at this point it's premature.
No problem. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. So under the Ontario, the new cap and trade program, is it a speculation or certainty that there will be something that would need to be done at the local level by the whichever corresponding company or I guess the utility company would be. Even though we don't have details as to the full extent of that, what the responsibility will be, but are we certain that something will still be required by us to do?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the chair, if I understand the question correctly, are you asking whether we're going to be required to report?
No, not report. Of whatever increases will have to be to the rates related to the cap and trade. From what we heard, as was presented by staff, that 95% of that corresponding fee it's a carry through to the province, but we're really anticipating 5% to be kept on hand for whatever required works will be needed to be done at the local level to mitigate greenhouse gases.
Right. So
So is that a certainty? I know there's still a lot of details that is required for the province to outline this, but is the certainty that there's some component of work that will be required at the local level, and that's what the reserve fund is for?
That is correct.
Good.
There is basically, as you've stated, we anticipate 95% of what we collect will be a pass-through to the province, but there is some management at the local level. And our reason and rationale for setting up the reserve is, A, to keep it very separate from the other local functions, which are decisions by this council. The other reason is this is a 3-year program. We don't pay the province annually. We pay at the end of the term. So to have the reserve for this commodity, so carbon is basically a new utility, to have this mixed in with existing reserves would be very difficult to manage.
So it's not necessarily just even local management, but because we don't know what those rates would be, on carbon rates will be, if they're higher, this reserve will help to, I guess, shelter some of the rate shock.
Right. It will help to balance some of the potential volatility.
Okay. And as we get more details and this program evolves over time, because it's a separate reserve fund, it would be easier for us to manage and perhaps even shift back to the ratepayers if so needed down the road.
That is staff's anticipation.
And if it were to be in just a general reserve as we have right now, it would be difficult to separate that.
That was staff's position.
Okay, all right. I'm just getting clarification as was presented that day for the benefit of committee members that weren't there that day to listen to the full report. But anyways, that helps for me to appreciate why that reserve is necessary. Quickly, I have one other question for communication. Because most of this, or almost all of this, is really a pass-through to the province, and it's being discussed here at the local level as the the owners of the utility company, but the customers will see that increase on their bill and think it's Kitchener Utilities that's increasing their rates. Will we have a communication strategy or a very active communication strategy that outlines in a separate form or separate letter or even an inclusion along with their bill, just clearly outlining this $75 or whatever the case may be is part of the cap and trade increase, and of that, how much is being passed on to the province? Do we have any strategy in mind?
Right. Through the mayor, our communications division and Kitchener Utilities marketing division are working on a multi-pronged strategy to communicate to our ratepayers. So you will see billing inserts as an example. We will have information on our website. There's a number of different avenues that they're
Good.
They're looking at.
That's excellent. I just wanted confidence that we will do all that we can outside of including as part of the bill, showing the ratepayers exactly why this increase is being done, and not on our behest.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Councillor Singh asked most of the clarifying questions I had. The last question I had, I'm trying to recall from committee, But is there an urgency in, I absolutely believe that we need to create the stabilization reserve fund, but is there an urgency in approving this now? And if not, if it was to be deferred, what's the latest that staff would think is a comfortable time to defer it to?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the mayor, I believe we're intending to come back with an updated report in January. So I can circle back with staff. We could defer the approval of setting up a reserve until the new year. But as we would prefer that as cap and trade becomes effective January 1, that shortly thereafter we would be able to.
Okay, so if it was deferred then, you could still implement it in January when it comes back. We would presumably have all of the information that Councillor Gazzola was concerned about at that point, and we could vote on it all at once. That's what I'm hearing?
Through the mayor, if it's just setting up the reserve, we could potentially defer that portion of the recommendation. And I'm not going to commit that we'll have all of the information by January 1, but it would be our hope.
Well, it's not your information to have, it's the province's information to transfer, so I couldn't hold you to that. Okay, so I'll put it back to Councillor Gazzola then. I would certainly, if you wanted to move deferral till when this comes back in January, I would be inclined to support that, but I do think it's important that we don't send any sort of, if you'll indulge my comment, Mr. Mayor, I do think it's important that we don't send any sort of mixed message back to the public in terms of the vote on this, that this City Council has any say whatsoever in the $75 charge that we're going to be hitting our taxpayers with. So I would support that, but I think it's important that we all support this unanimously.
Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. In the discussions that we had a couple of weeks ago on this item, there was a lot of concern that was raised in terms of the provincial direction, in terms of imposing this particular piece of legislation onto the taxpayer through the municipality. And as they're doing that, they're removing the 8% HST off the hydro rates. When we voted on this last 2 weeks ago at committee level, it was a 7-1 vote, and I was the only one that was opposed to it because I see this as another imposition by the government through their indirect means through the municipal government. And on the issue of the reserve in terms of deferring it, and my notes here that we did deal with the deferral 2 weeks ago, and that was presented by Councillor Fernandez, and the deferral lost 6-2, with Councillor Fernandez and I supporting the deferral, and the rest of council didn't, so it got approved to move forward. So I'm just presenting that forward. So notwithstanding that, I will not be supporting any part of this as I did last committee meeting.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Question I have is, because of our own utilities is owned by the city, if we were a private organization from, and like let's say, I guess up the street, what I can't
Union Gas.
Union Gas, sorry. Are they passing along these fees to their customers?
Ms. Fletcher?
Through the mayor, every utility, every gas utility is required to participate in cap and trade. It is a legislated requirement.
Okay, so we're not doing anything different than what everybody else is doing because it's mandatory.
It's mandatory.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I have a question, and also I would like to. When is this implemented? When does the province? Are they stating January the 1st, 2017 is the implementation date, or is it later on in 2017? When does their market sale go? When does that happen?
Through the mayor, my understanding is this cap and trade program becomes effective January 1 of 2017.
Is that when they're doing their trade of the extra credits and all of that?
Through the mayor, I can check on when the market opens, but
okay, that's fine. That's not. Going back to the deferral, I'm prepared to go with the deferral. I just think there's a lot more to be discussed here. I mean, there's two parts to this recommendation. The first one is that staff go back and figure out new rates in that, which is coming to this council next Monday. So that's already in progress. Whether we pass this resolution or not, it's coming, right, next Monday. The second part of it deals with the reserve fund. And I think before we establish reserve funds, I think we need to know a little more information. And I learned one thing tonight. I thought you were going to have to start paying the province immediately for these credits. And now I'm hearing you don't have to pay for them until, 2021, which is the 3-year period. So anyhow, I would support a deferral of the topic.
Ms. Fletcher, you wanted to respond to that?
I'm okay.
Sorry? Well, if there's some information that needs to be corrected, then...
Through the mayor, we start January 1 buying these credits. In terms of a pass-through to the province, it's not immediate.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola, you want to talk, then you need to turn your mic on. Okay. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I know that we had dialogue in committee meeting around the deferral of the Stabilization and Capital Reserve Fund. I don't pretend to remember every detail of it, but I do remember that finance staff was pretty stressed pretty encouragingly that we start it right off the bat so that we can keep our business piece and this piece completely separate. And I think that's something that is getting lost. And I would suggest if there, it sounds like there's going to be a deferral of possibly that piece. I would like to, and no offense to Cynthia or any staff over there, to hear again from our finance. Unfortunately, our DCAO is not here, and I don't think Leslie's equipped to answer the question, which is fine. That we do it on more of a just 2-week, when we're meeting next. Even if it is, because we will be dealing with rates, it may be an appropriate time to just have that discussion again with regards to that specific piece around reserve fund. I am fully prepared to support the recommendation as it came out of committee, but I do worry that we may need just that overall perspective from the finance department before making that full deferral until the new year. I think there's implications there that we would need to look at. So if there was a deferral, I would amend it to the time frame of the next committee meeting.
Okay, Councillor Marsh.
To that end, and maybe staff who are present could comment on this, my understanding is that that we are required to raise the rate to the customers to be flowed through to the province starting in January. And so if we raise the rate to the amount that needs to go to the province and not to add a 5% amount to begin a reserve fund, that it doesn't appear to our customers to be very straightforward or fair if we raise the rates twice within one calendar year. Is that's the way I remember the discussion. Can anybody help to clarify that?
I don't know if staff, but I think if I can suggest that the reason, as I recall from committee, that this was coming back so early in the year was because we wanted to come back early, so if we needed to make any adjustments once we had the additional information, we could make those adjustments either up or down based on the information we had once it fully becomes available in the first part of the year.
Okay.
Is that correct? Okay. Is that it for you? Okay. Councillor Davey. Can you click in again? I accidentally erased you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have, are we in comments, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, well, yeah, so I have a bit of a question actually for Councillor Yaneski, given his comments. I think everyone around this horseshoe understands that the province has handed down this increase to the municipality, and we have no ability to say no to this. So my question is, in his comments, he's going to vote against it, supposing he was successful. I'm curious what he would end up doing then when it came time to pay the province at the end of this program. Where would he find the money that we haven't saved? Councillor Yaneski, do you care to answer?
Councillor Yanetsky?
I haven't given it that much thought in terms of what the strategy would be in terms of follow-up, because as of right now, the information, we don't have all the information from the province, so it's kind of hard to make a decision when you don't have all the information before you.
Okay. So again, I think I'm being accommodating in saying, to Councillor Gazzola's point, what's the harm in holding off on the reserve fund? But I guess my concern, and I'll go back into my comment then, Mr. Mayor. My concern is that I find this instant hit as offensive as anyone. It really bothers me that out of the blue, the province is coming down with something that equates to a City of Kitchener tax increase of 7.5%. They didn't come in with a program to phase it in. There's no ability whatsoever for us to deal with this in a manner that doesn't impact homeowners. It's offensive. It's offensive to me. But I'm going to vote for it because it's the responsible thing to do. And it might be a great political thing to vote against it, but the responsible thing to do is to vote for it.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola?
No, wait a minute. Let's be unfair here. Let's be fair.
This is the last round of comments.
Yeah, okay, and I may well vote against it. Listen, this is not new. We know that the federal government and the provincial government who are acting on it have been talking about this for a long time, and it was only a matter of time when it comes. But at this point yet, all of the intricacies have not been worked out. It's difficult to tell what exactly the impact is going to be. So to vote against, I'm just voting against rushing into setting up reserve funds at this point until we know all of the issues. We don't even know what the opening capital credits are going to sell for. So, and it's unfair to say we're being politically irresponsible if we vote against.
If I could, sorry.
Councillor Davey?
Sorry, just to be 100% clear, Councillor Gazzola, I wasn't saying if you vote against, I would support the deferral. If you vote against staff developing a strategy for this, that's an issue.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
I don't want to lose sight of the last paragraph, and I fear that may be lost in the vote. So can we separate out again? I apologize for that, but the 3 paragraphs just to make it very clear.
Sure, I will deal with that, and I will deal with the request to defer. The stabilization piece, so the second paragraph, I'll deal with the deferral separately. I will just make some comments about this. Listen, nobody likes the fact that we have to deal with this and that we're talking the kinds of dollars that are involved. The only reason we're doing this, and council needs to remember this, is we're not dealing with this sitting around this horseshoe as politicians. We're dealing around this as keepers of a utility, a gas business that our predecessors decades ago decided to stay in this business as a municipality. And because of that, we are in effect a board of directors that are dealing with this issue and making a decision within the confines of the requirements being set by the governing body, the OEB, and the province, which has governance over this issue. You don't want to deal with this issue. There's a real simple solution. Sell the utility, and then we won't have to deal with this issue anymore. But I venture to guess that not a single person around this horseshoe is going to raise their arm and say, sell this utility, because we know how important this utility is in terms of providing us with proceeds to reinvest in the community for many of the amenities that we have in this community. So that's why we're dealing with this. So in terms of the core piece of it, we have no choice, but as Councillor Davey has said, but to pass that piece forward in terms of the our best guess at what those costs are going to be based on the information that exists today. For us to delay it simply means we're going to put an added burden on ratepayers later on in the year, because we're going to have to be made whole for this. So, I don't think anybody's going to want to say, oh, let's, cut into our profits, or let's to pay the province, or let's raise taxes to pay the to pay the province, because in fact the rules suggest that we can't do that. You have to keep each of the pieces separate. So I think we got to take a little bit of the politics out of this issue. You can disagree with this, but there's a certain reality to this piece in terms of the fiduciary responsibility we have as the board of directors of the gas utility. We then get into the debate of the stabilization fund. I really don't see personally huge merit in deferring that issue when we already know that a report is going to come back in the early part of the year, and the intent of that report was for us to make any adjustments early in the year as soon as we have that additional information. If folks think, the reality is we're going to need a stabilization fund of some sort anyway, in my belief. But, okay, Councillor Gazzola, you're entitled to your opinion. I've got the floor now. I listen to you. Okay? Thank you. And so, as such, I'm comfortable with dealing with it today, knowing it's going to come back in early 2017. If others see that there's value in deferring it, I'm amenable to that. But again, I don't know that in the long run that's in the best interest of our ratepayers. So with that, I will deal with the 3 paragraphs separately, and we'll deal with the motion to defer on the second one, and I'll come to that momentarily. So the paragraph 1 has been moved and seconded. So let's vote on that. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. On paragraph number 2, Councillor Gazzola, you have moved a deferral until when? I thought you indicated you wanted to move a deferral. Well, he indicated that he would be amenable because you were the one who spoke to it. But Councillor Davey then?
Yeah, sure. I'll move the deferral, and I want to be clear, Councillor Gazzola, just to save us some time, my intention is to defer it until January, but I'm just going to go ahead with Councillor Galloway-Selak's recommendation for 2 weeks first, just to make sure finance staff doesn't have an issue with it. If it passes at that time, I will support the deferral to January.
Okay, so the deferral is till for 2 weeks till committee. Is there a seconder? Oh, so Madame Clerk. 1 week. It's 1 week deferral till committee. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Singh. All those in favor of the deferral, and we'll do a recorded. Do we need a recorded vote on the deferral? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Paragraph 3. All those in favor? Opposed? That too is carried. Okay, thank you. We've completed Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee and Heritage Committee already. So we'll now move on to unfinished business, and we have the Pioneer Tower Road sidewalk. Councillor Gazzola, I believe this originally came from you. Do you want to click in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to quickly review. I'm not sure. There are four recommendations coming from staff. I'm not sure which one is the closest to what I had recommended, and that is that we go ahead and do what's required. I gather that's recommendation option 1A, and I will move that.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Second by Councillor Fernandez. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, a question to staff. I noticed that it mentions on page 9A4 that should Council direct staff to complete the installation of sidewalk that we're talking about. It should be noted that other sidewalk infill projects defined as priority 1 will be delayed. Now, I happen to think in selfish fashion that priority 1 coming up includes very necessary sidewalks in Victoria Park, which would serve hundreds of people. And I want to ask if this motion would hold up that sidewalk work as priority 1.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the Mayor, Jubilee Drive is planned to be completed as part of the 2016 projects.
So the answer is no?
So it would not hold up Jubilee Drive. It may not accelerate some of the sidewalks that are planned in 2017, which include the dune area.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Yanetsky.
In regard to option 1A and the intent to acquire the necessary land to go forward to provide the required widening across these 3 properties, and we have a deficient road width here that causes an issue, and the city's official plan rests that Pioneer Tower Road is 20 meters in width. And if the balance of Pioneer Tower Road is 24.6 meters in width, I would understand, and it should be corrected, that we need an official plan amendment.
Mr. Wilmer? Hold on, too many people are clicked in. Go ahead.
Through the Mayor, no, I don't think that's necessary. If the official plan says 20 meters, and 20 meters is what we need, I think the reality is that we may have acquired more land than we need in other areas, but it wouldn't require an official plan amendment for us to either return that to the adjacent property owners or simply carry on with an oversized road allowance.
So if we only need 20 meters as a right-of-way, then I don't see an issue. But I'm gathering that your intent was to comply with the rest of the road in terms of its allowance to make a reasonable road width throughout the entire road. That's the way I understood it. But if it's within the 20 meters and these 3 properties only require 20 meters, then I would agree, you don't need an OPA. But where are we going?
So through the Mayor, I would turn that to Mr. Reedman to advise as to whether 20 meters is all that's required across the frontage of these 3 properties.
Mr. Reedman?
Through the Mayor, we require 24 meters across these 3 properties. If you look at the image or the map on page 9A-5, the area that's in the black box, you'll notice that those properties jut out from the other ones. So there's insufficient width right now to put a proper sidewalk that meets AODA requirements, which is 1.5 meters.
I'm looking at that map, and I mean, you can't tell really properly, and you can tell it's slightly deficient, but it doesn't have any dimensions on it, so it's very difficult to answer, to determine what the width is in that particular spot. What do we ultimately need there to satisfy number A? Or are we going to go with a different option, number 3, which is one of those reduced standards, which is a meandering sidewalk, and by narrowing the road, then we don't have an issue there. But you sort of are taking in a traffic calming scenario in front of those 3 houses, which may be acceptable. I don't know, but Councillor Gazzola has recommended option 1A, so I question the validity of whether we need an OPA or not. And that's the crux. And whether there's enough room within the 20 meters, if there is 20 meters. I don't know what the width is right now. It doesn't state in the report.
Through the mayor, the road width at that location is 20 meters. The rest of the road width is 24 meters. So there is a constraint in front of those 3 properties to install a sidewalk. Option 3 does outline an option to narrow the road down to 6.5 meters. That would not be staff's preference. That's substandard from a snow clearing operations perspective, as well as it's not ideal for a pedestrian environment, having the sidewalk jut out and having a curb face sidewalk at that location.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. Whereas option B, with it encroaching onto the roadway and doing a kind of a road diet, where does Pioneer Road fall within speed calming priority list? Has it already been done, or is it, is anticipated down the road? Because if this would, serve to benefit that way and could lessen the cost in the future, I want to consider that, going that route.
Through the mayor, I don't have that information with me in terms of the priority for that. However, as noted in my previous response, staff would not prefer that option based on the substandard road width.
Okay, so a road diet in that section wouldn't be appropriate. Okay, that's fine then.
Councillor Davey.
Sir, comment?
Your comment?
Yes.
Any more questions, Councillor Fernandez?
Mr. Reedman, can you just elaborate a bit more on the dune sidewalks that you said may be impacted?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the mayor, the dune sidewalks are identified as a multi-year installation project, so they're planned to start in 2017, but they will take a few years to fully implement. So moving this up into the priority for next year may delay some of those projects slightly, or it may allow them to happen in a few years, but we would definitely not be able to accelerate that package of sidewalks.
Do you have street names?
Through the mayor, it's Conestoga College Boulevard, Pinnacle, Amherst, Durham, and Dune Valley.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. When we talk about option 1B with the rubberized sidewalk, is that something that we've done elsewhere in the city?
Through the mayor, that's an option that we've identified in the sidewalk infill policy as an option for areas where there are trees located in proximity to the sidewalk. One limitation around rubberized sidewalks is that their expected lifespan is about 5 to 7 years. So there is a replacement cost every 5 to 7 years if that were to be a permanent solution.
So, but my understanding of this report is that it would be temporary while you investigated the possibility of expropriating some of the frontage on those properties, right?
That is correct. That's what is outlined in the report. There is a small challenge with that, is that grading would have to be brought up to the sidewalk, which may impinge on the private property that's right adjacent to it. So the sidewalk would be elevated slightly higher than existing grade to be on top of the tree roots. So we would have to grade back the adjacent soil and landscaping around it.
Mm-hmm. But I'm seeing that as actually the least option, least costly option as an interim decision. 1B is 20,000.
No, in addition to.
I apologize.
Yep,
I'm sorry.
no
You
worries.
should read the whole sentence next time.
No worries.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the answers.
Okay, Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I agree to investigate option 1A, but I'm wondering why wouldn't we do 1A and 1B? Since we haven't tried rubberized sidewalks before, this would be an opportunity to pilot them in the City of Kitchener and see how well they hold up for a couple of years. Question of staff: is there any reason why we shouldn't pursue 1A and B?
Through the chair, we would only be able to place a 0.9 meter sidewalk at that location. So AODA requirements are 1.5 meters unless there's space constraints, i.e. the roadway and the property lines. So technically it would meet the legislation, but it would be substandard in terms of width. And then there's also the grading issues on the adjacent property that may have an impact.
And would the grading issues potentially impact the quality of the tree roots? Like, would it impact the roots potentially? Is that the idea?
Through the chair, we'd need permission from the adjacent property owners likely to regrade their property.
And would it impact the trees that we're trying to save by using the rubberized material?
Any work in the drip line may impact the trees. We'd look to minimize that through the use of this material.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Ioannidis, is that question or comments? I'll come to you then at the appropriate time. Councillor Gazzola, question or comments?
And I'd like to make a comment.
Okay.
I'll use my comment. Boom.
Go ahead.
No, the question is, and I may have asked, why was this not done when the road reconstruction took place? Who made that decision and why? Had it been done then, we wouldn't be here. So why wasn't it done then? Who can answer that? Can anybody answer that?
So through the mayor, this was done before I arrived at the City of Kitchener, so I don't know all the details around that. But I do know there are a number of technical challenges which the report outlines, including lack of width to install a sidewalk based on the property conditions and the 3 trees that are located in the location of the sidewalk.
But surely this isn't the first job that we've done in this city that have technical problems. And the technical problems are always dealt with and finish up the job. There appears to be no answer to that question. And
Mr. Wilmer has an answer. Mr. Wilmer?
Through the mayor, so I'll direct council to the map on the top half of page 9A5, which outlines the 3 properties in question. Lands to the west of that were a plan of subdivision. The subdivider was required to install a sidewalk. Lands to the east of that were a plan of subdivision. The subdivider was required to install a sidewalk. These 3 properties, to the best of my knowledge, were never a plan of subdivision, and there was no requirement by the developer when these homes were built or these lots were created to install a sidewalk. So that's why there's a gap. It's a remnant in between 2 plans of subdivision.
But we still had the problem, and it was our responsibility. We couldn't look to a developer. That having been said, that's fine. I really don't. Constituents have been after me and are concerned about young people walking there. The area near Conestoga College, we're talking post-secondary education type students. Here we're talking about youngsters involved. I just want to get some kind of a sidewalk there for them as quickly as possible. That's all I'm asking for. And after tonight, I think I have done my duty. I put it on somebody else's shoulder if something happens down the road, but I would like to see this corrected. So and with that I say, I don't care if it's 1A, 3, 22, or 49.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Actually, I'm glad you said that, Councillor Gazzola, because I'm not going to support option 1A. I was going to suggest, because and they're saying it doesn't meet the requirements, but it also has an exemption, I would support option 3. It's $25,000. The only difference is the sidewalk is about 1 meter instead of 1.5 meters. Kids are going to be able to get through, and we're going to save, $27,000. So if you want to change the recommendation, I'll support it, but I won't support 1A. I will support option 3.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah. I want to put forward, if any of those don't, I want to put option 4, do nothing. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is because it was literally about a year and a half ago, we just passed this policy when it comes to regards with sidewalk infill. And one of the major factors with regarding that was to take out the politics of where sidewalks will go. And that's why we have that policy. And I have a big issue when we have projects that need to jump the queue, especially by 5 to 10 years, according to staff's estimation. And I'm not prepared to support that because I know there's other areas, and such as the areas in Dune, that are probably have a more concern than this small stretch than what we're dealing with right now. And I'm prepared to not support any of those other recommendations except option 4, which is to do nothing.
Okay. Well, that would be a contrary motion. If the other motions fail, you can move that. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, in regards to comments, I have to agree with Mr. Wilmer in regards to his comments about the lands in the subdivision and the solicitor process. Sidewalks were required as part of that subdivision process. In addition to that, I do recall that years ago there was a public school along that street, Pine Grove Public School, that had been relocated. And I'm just wondering, and I'm not 100% sure whether that school happened to be where these 3 lots are. Is where the cul-de-sac is. Okay. Because I just thought maybe that was an issue why these 3 properties were not dealt with, and probably because they were not part of a planned subdivision, so they just remained as is. In regard to option number 1, I'm prepared to support it. I'm actually prepared to support any of the options because I think they're fine, but with option number 1, I'm prepared because I think it's the better way of going, although the timing may be an issue as well. But I'm also thinking that in light of Mr. Redmond's comments on the official plan, I'm assuming that Pioneer Tower Road, with its 24.6 meter in width, would be in compliance with the existing official plan, if that's the way it was built. If that's the case, then the current one would be in compliance as well. Food for thought, if it does comply or not. Anyways, I'm prepared to support either option that's before us, as opposed to the do-nothing option, because I think that's a terrible way of action, of no action. So that's my position.
Councillor Gazzola.
No, I'm prepared to revert to option number 3.
Okay, so as the mover of the motion, well, the motion has been moved and seconded, so you're withdrawing the first motion?
Yes, I have to withdraw that.
And you're making the second one. Do I have a seconder for the new one? Councillor Fernandez again? Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Just with respect to this, I will be supporting option 3 that's before us. I've walked this stretch. In fact, it's the place where the Terry Fox Run goes down the road on an annual basis. And it is a missing piece on a road that can have a decent amount of traffic on it because of the way the subdivision is laid out. Is it jumping the queue? Yeah, it is jumping the queue, and I think I anticipate that some of the reticence we're hearing from some of our colleagues around the horseshoe lies with the fact that hopefully, as justification is made in this instance to jump the queue, from time to time, when other circumstances come up, people will show the same graciousness in terms of trying to handle any of those requests when they come before us. I think this is a legitimate one based on the traffic volumes and the geography of the area, and hopefully we can see us move forward with option 3. So a recorded vote has been called. Opposed? That's carried. Okay. We've dealt with 8B. Under new business on the Regional Council update, just want to let Council know that Councillor Davey presented at Regional Council with respect to the development charges. You probably, I think, all were copied on an email with an update on that. Essentially, the region has deferred the issue until the end of November, beginning of December, when we may deal with it at that time or see a further deferral, but a lot of work and discussions continuing to go on with respect to the issues that we've identified as well as other issues on that file. So just wanted people to be aware of that. Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Oh, sorry, you had a question on that? On that issue? Okay, I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Well, he can go because mine's completely different.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll come back to you in a second.
Yeah.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, in light of that issue, I just want to thank Councillor Davey for representing us in our position in that. I think it was it's a significant position to take, and I think which will have huge impact on our community, and I'm happy to see that Regional Council decided to defer that in light of all that information.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, it's just under new business. We all received a letter from the Minister of Children and Youth Services with regards to bans that municipalities have on road hockey. And it's something that I'd like to bring forward in a motion just to direct staff. I can read the motion if you'd like. Whether it needs to be notice a motion or we deal with it tonight, it doesn't matter to me. Direct staff to report back on the city's policies around activities on roadways, such as road hockey, basketball, and other types of physical activities. The focus of the report to include our existing policies or bylaws and a review of allowing these to be permitted uses on roadways. And I put in brackets where safe to do so, because I'm not suggesting we allow it on like regional roadways, but something that we can just look at what we're doing now. The minister is encouraging all municipalities, which the majority have bans for road hockey, to allow it just for kids to get out and have more physical activity in an informal way in spaces that they can do so. I know we will send out letters to residents when they have their basketball nets in areas that they're not supposed to be, and I'm not suggesting basketball nets be on roadways, but that we'd be allowed to permit these uses, or at least look at it. And it's my understanding that it's under our jurisdiction. I was always under the impression it was part of the Ontario Highway Traffic Act, but that is actually not the case according to the Ministry of Transportation. So I can put that up if you'd like.
Okay, well, you can give it to the clerk. We do need to waive notice, so I'll need a motion to do that. I would suggest that we do that because, as we know, you may not be here next council meeting, so I think it'd be good if we can just address this today. So first, I guess I need a motion to waive notice. Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis, and I need is it 3/4 or 2/3? Sorry? 2/3 for that. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now you're moving it, Councillor Galloway-Seelock, and the seconder, Councillor Davey, and Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I'd like to have an understanding from Mr. May about this motion that's being put forward. My understanding is I had discussions with staff about this previous. Maybe you can enlighten us about how that moved forward.
Mr. May.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, when I inquired about this particular issue, bylaw informed me that as far back as we have records, so all the way back to 2008, we have never once laid a charge in relation to this. So my suggestion is, given the already heavy workload of bylaw, if council has a position you would like to take tonight, take it. Don't direct us to go away and do months of work when they already have a heavy workload.
So that's essentially what I was going to suggest, is that really this is already in practice, and we're really working well with the public. We've got lots of good communication. When somebody complains, we work really well with citizens and families. So I really value what Mr. May is saying in regards of not adding more work to our bylaw staff.
Councillor Gazzola? Oops, sorry, can you re-click in? Thanks.
No, my question really was when do you want to, what's the date for reporting back, and if staff have time? I know a couple of weeks ago I tried to bring something and staff didn't have time now. I'm not opposed to this, but do we not need to look at it? Are there liability issues here if we all of a sudden change the road we're going down, or I'd like to play road hockey, but is it something that we can just quickly decide tonight without any study? And if we need a study, do you have time to do that?
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I think the motion is pretty clear that it just directs staff to do that very thing, and doing a study or doing a review. But in light of Mr. May's comments, I don't know if Councillor Galloway-Seelock is amenable of just directing staff to carry its practice of not enforcement or not laying any charges. I think that would be more prudent, especially with the workload that they mentioned. I'll leave it to her. If not, I can offer that amendment.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I was trying to take the road of, let's direct them to just look at it and have an opinion. But quite frankly, I would be willing to sit here today. It's my understanding that the bylaws are in place that it should not be allowed and that there is a ban on it. Therefore, I would, if I'm going to give a position, I'm prepared to give a position tonight and tell staff to go ahead and reverse that bylaw and allow it to be a permitted use on our roadways. I didn't want to do that specifically because I didn't want to make anybody else uncomfortable in making a decision immediately. But if that's what staff would prefer, I'm prepared to move that. But that also aligns with what they're currently doing. But I think our paper needs to align with our practice, and I think that's the piece that I'd like to see firmed up, is the paper align with the practice that we're already doing, from what I'm hearing. So I guess it's up to council to make that decision, and we can move forward with this and change it to that staff be directed to bring back the bylaw change with regards to allowing this to be permitted. That would be the change that I could if that's what's if council's comfortable in doing that quickly. I'm prepared to, but I don't know if everyone else is. So I was trying to take that softer approach and getting. I understand bylaw has a huge workload. I didn't specifically put a timeline on it, but because we are moving into winter, so whatever would be implemented probably wouldn't be until next season anyways. So I didn't put a timeline on it, but I wouldn't want it to be overly strenuous, just something where the facts of what they are and what it would mean. So I wouldn't see it being a huge burden to have a report come back. But I'm good either way. So I look to comments to see which way council would want to go.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Yes, I'm in comments. Yeah,
Sure.
I'm inclined to, I would definitely support this. I think the appropriate action would be to suspend, not that we're really suspending anything if there's never been a fine laid, but to continue that practice until bylaw has the time to take a look at it. And they may want to come back and say that on some of our absolutely busiest streets, it doesn't make much sense to permit it. And even then, we just tell the usually kids to move on to a street that's less busy. But I was in awe that this bylaw was in place, because if it was a finable offense, I would probably have a stack this high from my youth of playing road hockey on the streets. So it's one of those issues that I think we should just deal with right away. And when bylaw has the opportunity to deal with it, they can come back. But it's not an urgent one as long as we're not levying any fines.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. I think playing road hockey and sports, in your neighborhood is one of the greatest neighborhood building activities. And I think having the ability to play a game of hockey and yell "car" is a great Canadian tradition. So I think it's absolutely, totally supportable.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, just very quickly, similar to earlier comments. I would absolutely support, again, what staff have already been doing. Also surprised that our bylaws prohibit this activity. I think very few people probably know that this bylaw probably exists, but glad that we haven't been enforcing, and otherwise people would be in uproar. And I think this is the right direction. Obviously, this is, we could take the necessary time to bring back a report, or obviously amend the bylaw, but I would strongly suggest we carry on a practice of no enforcement.
Councillor Fernandez?
So I want to understand exactly what right now I see that we're asking for a report. Then I hear that we're going to change the bylaw. So what are we asking for?
At this point, the motion that's on the floor is the one that's in front of us. It's been moved and seconded. There has been the suggestion that we add the words that we continue our practice of suspending enforcement, and that this report become that this report be completed as staff have time. There's also been a suggestion from Councillor Galloway-Seelock that she would be prepared to to change the motion and give staff direction to simply get rid of the bylaw without the benefit of any additional information from legal or staff review. But at this point, this is the motion that's on the floor.
Okay. I don't see the point in asking for a report when Mr. May has already said we've had no charges. Our bylaw staff deal with it in a very amenable fashion. I confess to you, I put forward a discussion with some of our staff and was strongly discouraged to bring forward a motion that just everything is working fine, we've had no problems, and just leave it alone. So I really don't want to start adding extra work unnecessarily. I think we should really just carry along with our own practices, and when bylaw finds that they have the opportunity to review it and make some amendments, let them do it then. But I don't think we should either be asking for a report now at this time, nor should we be asking them to spend some more time changing the bylaw at this immediate moment. I don't think anything needs to change right now. Nothing has really happened. So I support what the minister is saying, but I think that we're adding work when we don't need to add work.
Councillor Etherington?
My only problem with this is it does not mention soccer, and I'd suggest soccer instead of hockey.
I think that's covered under other. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I don't have a concern with this. I think there's really not that much of a review that needs to be done. I think it's primarily comes down to risk management, and I think as far as our policy is concerned, it's more to protect the corporation, and I think that's a risk we can take. And I'm willing to take that. So I'm willing to support all that.
Councillor Gazzola?
Oh, wait, the recommendation is asking for a report. Is that what you're supporting?
That's what he said he's supporting, yes.
Okay. And that's what the recommendation is.
That is the recommendation so far, correct.
Yeah, that's what there is, to do a report.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. And that, staff, even without our direction, has not laid any charges, and so they would continue to presumably not lay any charges.
Well, I quite frankly totally agree with Councillor Fernandez. We don't really need to do anything. We're not enforcing it. Why do we even have to do anything? And as she stated, later when they've got more time, if they want to deal with it, appropriately deal with it to see if there are any ramifications, do it then. But at this point, we don't have to do anything. But if it means asking for a report, I will support that as opposed to all of a sudden change the bylaw.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I don't see any timeline on this, direction. So, I mean, it could be within this term of council. We could really just keep it wide open until such time that staff is able to address it, and just to maintain the current practices. I do see value, absolutely, in making sure that our policies are aligned with our practices. That's just good governance. So I'm in support of this motion, and I also think it's wise to keep the timing flexible.
I'll just add my comments. I certainly am prepared to look at this in this format as staff have time at some point in the future. I think we need to keep this in the context that just because another city took what in my view was a bit of an overzealous approach in terms of dealing with this situation, we have no indication that has been the practice or the history ever in this community, nor any suggestion that our staff want to change that and start changing that practice. I think that for the same reasons why, for example, we made some of the changes to the wild animal bylaw to deal with that 1 in a million time when you have a particular problem, is probably why the history has taken us to the point of having a bylaw in the first place. I'm guessing that because it was, I think, done before my time on council, but Leslie's saying yes. So maybe Councillor Gazzola remembers when it was originally passed, but from his staff time. But my point being that I couldn't sort of just wholeheartedly say let's get rid of it today, but I'm comfortable knowing that under no circumstances will kids be denied. Saying that for the benefit of our media present, under no circumstances will kids be denied the right to play road hockey in the city of Kitchener this winter, or soccer, or basketball, lacrosse, or whatever, hacky sack, or whatever other sport kids are playing these days. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I agree with much with what is being said and moving forward with this motion. I tried to take the softer approach than coming out with just a full-on ban. I think Christine's helped a lot with adding in there, and I did want to correct something that I said. Kids will definitely play road hockey any time of the year. I did mention that it was more of a summer, and that's not the case. I know of many kids who are out there in the winter playing as well, so I wanted to correct that. But I think it's just important. I know people are saying there's no timeline, but I also wouldn't like to see this drag on forever. I think we've given many of the opinions around the table are to continue what you're doing. I think it doesn't need to be a full-on hours of tons of engagement across everyone, but getting the input that you need for a report to come together and come forward to council within. I'll just leave it as a reasonable time frame. And when you can fit it within your workload.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. It wasn't unanimous? Sorry. Okay, I thought you had it up for the first one. That's fine. So it's been carried. Any other questions and answers? If not, it's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Davey, that leave be given the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to the committee of the whole. All in favor? Opposed? That's... Oh, late starters, sorry. Madam Clerk. Well, where'd that come from? Oh. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, one late starter. It's a revised bylaw from an email from staff dated September 22nd relating to PSIC item number 1.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the bylaws with the amendment? That was the one pertaining to the
Barracastle.
sorry? Barracastle, the changed bylaw.
Sorry, Barracastle.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Schneider. The council resolve itself into committee of the whole. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Schneider.
Okay. Bylaws listed on the agenda for second reading, that the bylaws considered by this committee be taken as read a second time and be recommended for enactment. Mover? Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
I'll move the dog appeal.
Okay. Questions? Question? Okay. Councillor Yanetsky has a question.
Yeah, having read the report in terms of the conditions that were imposed by the decision of the committee, and there's indication also in the report that the property owner or the owner of the dog who own a dog and the conditions being imposed on them are moving as of October the 1st from where they are now in the multiple residential building. Do those conditions also apply to the new residents, or is it just to where they live right now?
Councillor Fernandez, you were on the committee, I believe?
Yes.
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
Councillor Schneider, you're...
Yeah, it is, because they're moving out of a multiple unit into a single unit, so that's actually better.
So the conditions will still apply?
All the conditions apply. The muzzling, everything all applies, yeah.
Okay, that's right. Just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. You mover. All in favor? Okay, carried. The fence variances. I think we... Mover for the fence variances?
Yeah, four.
One was... Okay. And questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 4, the exemption C408 of the municipal code for animals.
We have a couple people with questions.
Mover?
Councillors Gazzola and Etherington have questions.
Just explain for the purpose of the people, if there are anybody watching this instead of the ball game, what we're dealing with?
Or the debate.
Yeah, probably the debate. Yeah, it's in regards to a pet that is used as a guide pet, and it's a pig. Yeah, so it's
I've read the report,
yeah.
but I'm just saying that other people that hear about it down the road, there's a valid explanation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's medicinal and all. It's a.
Councillor Etherington has a question as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, it's in my ward, I was going to move it, but it's already been moved. I have some information that might help council with the issue. Yesterday, I went to see this Ward 9 resident and met his 100-pound miniature pig, Jackie. On compassionate health grounds, I support the staff recommendation to allow this specific service animal exemption to our animal control bylaw. Now, I would emphasize that, as far as I'm concerned, this is an exemption, and it would not open the doors to others who might want to keep pigs in the city. I would also confirm the Humane Society findings that the pig, which stands about 2 feet tall, is well cared for, perhaps spoiled, at a house it shares on a friendly basis with a 2-year-old boy and a dog owned by a fellow tenant that stands a little higher than the pig. There have been no actual complaints about the pig, and the Humane Society only learned about the animal from a neighbor when Jackie ventured out of its enclosed backyard for a few moments to the front of the property where it was seen by a curious neighbor. The pig, by the way, is house-trained, and during its life has learned to ring a bell or nuzzle the door when it needs to go out in the backyard. Now, I would add that the owner prefers a pet pig because he's not crazy about cats or dogs and believes Jackie will live for about 30 years. He insists the pet has helped him cope with drug and alcohol problems that have led to anxiety and depression issues. And finally, Mr. Chair, I would add that while I frequently argue that everything happens in my ward, I never dreamed that when I ran for council, I would conduct a pig visitation as part of my councillor duties.
Okay. Seems like this is a news story or column in the making, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item 5? Yep. Mover, again, questions, comments? Okay. For the lease extension for 220 King Street West. All in favor? Opposed? That carried. Okay. Item number 6 is the, the tag day request for the Royal Canadian Sea Cadet Corps. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay. And a mover to rise and report. Councillor Ioannidis.
It's been moved by Councillor Schneider.
Yes.
Actually, no, you got to read this.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay. That the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interest and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Davey, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed, and numbered serially by the clerk. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Marsh, seconded by Councillor Singh, that we now adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.